Senator Mathias Cormann joined us a couple of weeks ago, May 30th, I think, from memory, and we spoke a little bit about the new Labor government budget, their first budget in federal government. And today we're going to have a little bit more of a look at the impact of the Medicare levy surcharge. The rates, the levels of application have been changed slightly. I don't know much about it, and I really should find out because, as a single person, I pay my Medicare levy. Do you pay Medicare levy?
Yes, I do.
Just about everybody does. I think it's 1.5% of your taxable income. That's about all I have any clue about. Let's find out from someone who knows exactly what they're talking about. Joining us now to talk about the impact of the budget on what it's going to mean to your back pocket, Senator Mathias Cormann. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Great to have you back in.
Yeah, it's great.
It's good to actually talk to someone who's at the pointy end of politics. We sort of let everybody, more than welcome for anyone to come in and have a chat with us. You're the only one that fronts up, so it's good. It's good to see.
Very much happy to be here.
Now then, we spoke on the 30th about obviously the new federal budget and the impact that was going to have on Australian families. Today we're going to talk more specifically about the changes to the Medicare levy surcharge and how that affects private health insurance and the follow-on effects to our hospitals and things. So you've spent a lot of time speaking, and I'm just going through the notes here, I don't want to miss anyone, the departments of Prime Minister, Cabinet, Finance, Treasury, Health and Ageing, as well as Medibank Private and the regulator, the PHIAC. So you've obviously covered this quite thoroughly. You haven't just gone and read an article in a woman's magazine at the hairdressers. So tell me, from all the research you've done, you can pick up some good information there, I've got to say. But what have you been able to find out through this process about where we sit now, the changes to the budget?
Well, I mean, essentially, firstly, we have just gone through a 2-week, what is called a Senate estimates process. So after the government brings the budget down, through the Senate committee system, we essentially go through it with a fine-tooth comb. And I have been focusing over the last 2 weeks of the impact, particularly of this budget measure. Now, just to take a step back, the challenge for any government is to make sure that all Australians who need access to hospital care can have timely access to quality hospital care when they need it, and not when the system sort of is able to say that they're high enough priority, which is why it's important to have the right balance between public hospitals and private hospital treatment. A few years ago, the previous government introduced a system of carrots and sticks, I guess it was called, to encourage people to take out private health insurance if they could afford it. And one of those measures was an additional Medicare levy surcharge on top of your Medicare levy. So if you didn't take out private health insurance and you earned more than $50,000 as a single or more than $100,000 as a couple, you essentially had a tax penalty applied to you. And that was one of the sort of sticks to encourage people to take out private health insurance. There was a 30% rebate, lifetime health cover, a range of measures which ultimately led to an increasing number of people taking additional responsibility for their healthcare needs, I guess, by taking out private health insurance.
And that was the intention at the time?
That was the intention at the time.
Okay.
Now, what the government has done is they've said, OK, that $50,000 threshold, we're going to double it. We're going to say it's now going to be $100,000, which obviously means that a lot less people are going to be captured by it. Now, the result of that, and the government has conceded that right from the word go, is there's going to be a number of people who will leave private health insurance as a result, which, of course, from our point of view, we believe is going to put pressure on the capacity of public hospitals to provide treatment to all the people who need it.
Do you think that's truly the case? And again, I'm not questioning, I'm simply... But if I was, say, for argument's sake, I was earning $75,000, that'd be nice. But 75 cents in reality. But if you're making $75,000 a year and you've had private health insurance for the last couple of years, do you think people will really turn around and go, oh, I won't have to pay that surcharge now, might as well drop it? Do you think that will happen?
Well, I mean, the reality, it's, the Treasury tells us it will happen. I mean, if you look at the budget papers, and that's one of the things that, well, there's two things that came out of the sitting fortnight. One is the Treasury had been telling us that they expect 485,000 people to leave. Okay. What we found out during the week was that didn't include children. And I mean, that is at a time when 1 in 3 children at PMH has to wait longer for treatment than what is appropriate. And these are not my figures, these are health department figures. And the second thing that we found out is that the government didn't actually cost, model or assess the impact of the proposed change on public hospitals. Now, the reason they say they haven't costed or assessed it is because they call it bureaucratically like it's a secondary effect. Whereas I sort of have been saying, well, I mean, there's going to be a tsunami of additional demand hitting public hospitals. Of course you should be assessing the impact.
Because the public hospitals, they're struggling anyway at the moment. So if there's more people dropping out than going public, then, I mean, there'll be less beds and more people sick for longer.
Well, I mean, essentially, and that is our point. I mean,
I would have thought a secondary effect is then the flow onto the workforce by having more down hours and things. I would consider that as being a secondary effect, not, you know, that's an instantaneous response, isn't it? If all of a sudden you've got extra people needing the existing facilities, it's a quite easy equation, isn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, and there's two aspects to it. One is the number of people leaving, but I mean, the government then says, well, we don't know how many of those people would have accessed hospital care. What I'm saying is that every single person that took out private health insurance in the past that leaves is somebody who used to be contributing additional funding into the health system. So we don't know whether they would have accessed hospital care, but one thing we know for sure, every single person that is in private health insurance puts additional resources into the health system. And if we've got, you know, around about 700,000 people leaving the system, that is going to take a lot of resources out of the hospital
So why has
system.
this happened then? Why has the federal government put this forward?
Well, I mean, the government will tell you that they take the view because the threshold hasn't been indexed for, you know, since its introduction in 1997, that a lot of people are caught in a tax trap, is the way they call it, that were never intended to be. And I mean, to some extent, there's certainly an argument that the threshold should have been indexed. I guess what I'm saying is to increase it from 50,000 to 100,000 in one go is just too much. Yeah. If it had been indexed incidentally since its introduction, it would now be around about $75,000 to $78,000, which is sort of exactly bang the figure that you mentioned before.
A lot of people moving to WA, of course, because the average income here now is about $73,000, and we're the highest earning state. It seems that $100,000 is a bit of a pie in the sky figure. Nice round number. Let's just double it. Yeah, it seems like wasn't very well thought out. According to some of your figures here, a loss of $2.7 billion in funding for hospital treatment.
Well, I mean, essentially what I've done is I've gone to the budget papers, and the government actually expects to make money out of this. Because people are leaving health insurance, it means that they no longer will have to pay the 30% private health insurance rebate to those that are leaving. And as a result of that, over the forward estimates, the government expects to save about $960 million. Now, that $960 million is only 30% of the contribution income because it is a 30% rebate. So through a range of adjustments, I mean, essentially it's $3.2 billion of revenue minus an allowance for cost of administration of funds, etc. I come down with an estimate that I believe is quite accurate, that we will lose $2.7 billion in funding for hospital treatment. Now, if you sort of take a sort of a rule of thumb, Western Australia is about 10% of national funding. That's $270 million that will no longer be available for hospitals treatment in Western Australia.
I guess my biggest concern is, my understanding is the state runs the hospitals. What amazes me is the federal government can go ahead and make a move that's so drastic in nature without consulting the states who actually run the hospitals.
I share your view, and again, I mean, at risk of being a little bit political again, and I think I've got my one opportunity to be political every show. I mean, I was somewhat surprised. I mean, I asked the Prime Minister's department, like, surely before the election, the point was made that, we're going to have a new era of cooperative federalism in health. We're going to work with the states to fix the health system. I mean, surely if you're going to introduce a policy change which is going to have a significant impact on state and territory governments and on their capacity to provide public hospital care, surely you're going to talk to them. No, that's not usual convention, that's not normal practice. I said, well, I don't care about normal practice. I want to know, what are you going to do now? And, I mean, as I say, they essentially call it a second-round effect, and they don't have to, essentially cost second-round effects. I think it doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, there's obviously a lot to get through, and probably more than we can get through in 7 minutes. Is there somewhere where people can access this information? And is there,
well, I think my website sort of has got quite a bit of detail on this. So if people want to have a look at how I came up with the $2.7 billion estimate, I invite them to go and have a look.
Well, look, unfortunately we've run out of time, but 1 out of 3 children needing treatment at PMH already has to wait. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's a few...
double, triple.
Well, not necessarily. People aren't going to necessarily get sicker, but the money to provide this infrastructure, to pay the nurses and things, that money's going to disappear.
Maybe just to wrap up quickly, I mean, I think that the State Health Minister, Jim McGuinty, should call on the federal government to make the modelling that they've done available to him so that he can actually do a proper assessment of the impact on public hospitals and then ask for additional funding to cope with the additional demand.
Jim, I think the kids getting ready for kindergarten this morning can understand exactly where you're coming from, and it makes perfect sense. Get online, wakeupwa.com.au, read a bit more information. Obviously, grab the links, check out the Senator's website and get a bit more of an in-depth understanding. I've merely skimmed across, but at the very least, it seems our state's health leaders should have a say on our health system, which obviously is going to have an impact. Thank you for bringing this to our attention.
All right, thank you very much.